Ukraine, Ukraine and Ukraine. Out of the last 365 days, not a single day has passed when we did not hear this word. It makes sense for broadcasters like CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, Russia Today, The Guardian, Reuters, The Economist and many more to cover. They have their national and financial interests closely attached to that. The puzzling thing is why Indian news channels are hooked up upon it. Do they not have a crisis of India's own to cover? For instance, apart from occasional coverage, there is a deafening silence on Myanmar's political, democratic, economic and constitutional crisis. Even the Indian government has taken a moderate route. The situation is deteriorating, and if this occurs, the northeastern states will suffer greatly. Thank you for joining me today. My name is Savita Mishra and this is TFI Post. 2 years have passed since Myanmar's breathed democracy into the air. The country is under military rule for the time being. The public has resorted to arms against the Myanmar army. There is a new army in the country called the People's Defense Forces, PDFs. They have come up with their own access to high-caliber arms in the nearest illegal arms market. More recently, PDFs have been able to get hold of drones. On the other hand, the Myanmar junta is getting support from the Chinese and Russian governments. The problem for India is going to get bigger. Myanmar is too close, too connected, too ethnically related and too strategically important to ignore the union government. India and Myanmar share historic, cultural and economic ties. 89 to 90% of Burmese follow Buddhism, which originated in India. It is one of the 5 pillars of which India-Myanmar relations are built. The other 4 are business, Bollywood, Bharatanatyam and Burmese teak. Not so long ago, Myanmar was part of British India. Remember the iconic slogan, "You give me blood and I will give you freedom," given by Netaji? It was announced in Japanese-controlled Myanmar during World War II. After gaining independence, both countries signed a Treaty of Friendship in 1951. An estimate by the Ministry of External Affairs suggests that anywhere between 15 to 25 lakhs people of Indian origin reside in Myanmar. Living in Yangon and Mandalay, they are mainly engaged in export-import businesses or work as employees of multinational corporations. The ethnic ties are stronger on the border front. India and Myanmar share 1,643 km long border with each other. Arunachal Pradesh, Nagaland, Manipur and Mizoram share India's border with Myanmar. It is the only Southeastern Asian country that share a land border with India. Apart from that, India's border with Myanmar has triangular connections with China in the Arunachal Pradesh and Bangladesh in Mizoram. No wonder both countries have a free movement regime. Under it, citizens of both countries living within 16 km of each other can cross borders and live in each other's territory for 2 weeks. A visa is not needed, nor are the rules of traditional customs checks and clearance required to be followed. It mainly benefits people belonging to the Chin ethnicity of either side of the border. In fact, the disdain for the border is so great that many local tribes do not even accept it. This is where India's concerns regarding borders get bigger. The ongoing crisis has killed thousands of Myanmaris. For the first time in 57 years, Chin people living near the borders have to hear the sirens of combat jets. These are operated by the Myanmar Tatmadaw. The crisis has started to affect the borders. According to reports available in the public domain, entire villages are being burned down and emptied. Residential areas are being shelled. Loot, torture and rape have become common phenomena. Both sides of the conflict are using humans as shields. With so much torture, Chin people are finding it easier to cross the more than 500 km long border with Mizoram and Manipur. Many have died en route. By January 2022, more than 20,000 Chins had officially crossed the border to take shelter in India. According to February 2023 estimate, the number has crossed 40,000. Given the kind of kinship Chin people enjoy with Indians, especially with Mizos of Mizoram and Kuki-Zomis of Manipur, we won't be surprised if the unofficial numbers turn out to be more than 1 lakh. Their rehabilitation is becoming a serious issue, not just economically but politically too. Mizo National Front (MNF), the ruling party of Mizoram and BJP's alliance partner in the NDA, went against Amit Shah and the Home Ministry's mandates to help them. In nearby Manipur, the state government is a bit less accepting of Chin people, but locals are not happy with it. Then there is the security cost attached to accepting them. The cost of violent conflicts spilling over into the northeast is high. Ethnic groups on both sides of the border are fighting for different factions. Meitei community-dominant valley-based insurgent groups, VBIGs of Manipur, are said to be fighting for the Myanmar army. On the other hand, the Chin National Army and the Chin Defense Forces are fighting against the Myanmar army. Tell me, why would the Meitei community, which is dominant in Manipur, be accepting of the Chin community, whose fighters are against it in Myanmar? We are lucky that the fight has not crossed Indian borders. What has crossed Indian borders are drugs. Yes, the Indian-Myanmar border is very close to the Golden Triangle. It is the region where the borders of Myanmar, Thailand and Laos meet. The region is notorious for opium production. Opium from this region has been used by Europeans and North Americans for centuries. Drugs like opium, heroin and amphetamine regularly cross the border and are used to corrode the young and vulnerable. Reverse transportation is also a recurring phenomenon. Under a special campaign, 40,000 kgs of drugs were destroyed in October last year. Home Minister Amit Shah was himself present virtually to see all of it. It is not going to deter these mafias. The reason is simple. Their livelihood depends on it, and now insurgent groups are also dependent on it. These groups help drug mafias cross the border for payments. This money is then being used to foster insurgency on both sides of the border. Make no mistake about it, both sides of the aisle are culpable for it. The harakiri has given China ample time and space to gain influence in the resource-rich Myanmar. The communist nation is funding more than a dozen infrastructure projects in Myanmar. With oil and gas pipelines, roads and rail links, the China-Myanmar economic corridor is only growing in leaps and bounds. Rakhine Chin, Sagaing, Kachin, Shan and Kayin are the main areas in which China has poured tens of billions of dollars. China sends gas from Rakhine to its Yunnan province through a gas pipeline. It wants to extract more oil, gas, precious metals and stone from these regions. To ensure this, China has also sent its mafias to these regions. They are engaged in illegal sale of arms, drugs and even human hair. By hook or crook, China wants a big piece of Myanmar's energy resources. Desperation is understandable since through Myanmar, China wants a backdoor entry into the Indian Ocean. Another death trap is just around the corner. This is nothing but a direct threat to India's Act-East policy. In a way, Myanmar is a cornerstone for this policy. One of the goals of this policy is to make the Northeast a flourishing trade route. Myanmar is nothing less than a gateway for India's venture towards East Asia and beyond. For this purpose, projects like the Kaladan Multimodal Transit Transport Facility, the India-Malaysia-Thailand Trilateral Highway Project, the Mekong-India Economic Corridor, the Delhi-Hanoi Railway Link, and the BCIM Economic Corridors are in various phases of development. A few of them are proposed, the development of which depends on how much the Myanmar crisis does not hamper peace in the Northeast in the upcoming years. At the time of writing, active projects are running on delayed time. Despite direct competition with China in Myanmar, the Indian government has adopted a policy of wait and watch for now. It has its reason for doing so. For one, India confronting the Myanmar army on the issue that could end up the Tatmadaw joining hands with China to create a ruckus on border. Secondly, India has a pact with Tatmadaw to share real-time intelligence against any anti-India insurgency group operating from the border region. In case India goes harsh, the Myanmar army could abandon that. Thirdly, India does not want to be seen as a country that interferes in the internal affairs of a smaller neighbor and articulated in NAM policy. Those are virtuous goals and India has done well till now. It is just that till now the benefits from non-alignment have been far greater than the losses. With China's aggressive push, the tide could soon turn. India should start leveraging its soft war to minimize its losses in the future.